Hello and welcome to the AI-powered storytelling mixer, which for those of you who don't know, mixer is it's like an orientation thing that they would have in college where everybody gets together and feels really uncomfortable and talks to everybody, and then you get to know people. And then you get to ask questions, and then it's not so that when you start on Tuesday, it's not supposed to be like, but yeah, it's just a very impromptu thing. I always talked about, because this is the fourth time that I've done this. And every single time, the thing that I really liked about it was the communities that are built up, or people make friends within the course, which I think is really awesome, which I did not expect. And I always wanted to do like a once a month thing. So I will probably do this once a month thing where just like this kind of impromptu get together, people can ask questions or say, hey, this would be a cool idea if this is here, or just to reorient everybody with everything that's going on, because I know I make a lot of changes. I'm going to try my hardest this summer not to do new stuff and just fix all the old stuff, which I'm sure Darlene will be very happy with. But sometimes I can't help it because it's too cool. There's too many cool things. The coolest thing since the last cohort, although I did a little bit of it during it, would be all the AI stuff. So forever, I'm talking to other people about putting GPT-3, which is the OpenAI stuff. So that's this stuff here, in case you don't know, OpenAI. So this is the Elon Musk company that was sold to Microsoft. And then they're the ones that make GPT-3. And then also the new image one, which maybe you've seen, which is the Dolly. It's now Dolly 2, where you basically just type, oh, draw me an armchair in the shape of an avocado, and then it'll give you like 8 different versions of that in like 10 seconds, which is crazy. So this is the AI system that Subtext uses, where I've essentially just taken the story form and hooked it up into that to then give all kinds of really awesome features to it. And for those who've used it in the last 2 or 3 months know how awesome it is. It's just like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. But I haven't even like started to fine tune everything. It uses what's called few shot learning, where I give it a couple examples in context of it, and then it figures out what to do. When you fine tune the model, you make it so it's like, okay, no, this is what it should look like, and you spend a lot of time. The last 5 years, I have all that information. I just have to put it in the right spot. And so then when you do that, you get much faster and much more accurate results. So the coolest thing ever, which is what I just did actually I did it yesterday or the day before, which again is it's not really a new feature. It's a feature that I like improved. So I already did this feature. So it's not like I forced this in here, but so for instance, this is a zombie love story thing that I was messing around with earlier in the spring. I've made it much more obvious wherever the AI stuff is. So it's this little DNA strand and a button here that you click to get. Anytime you see that, you know that you're getting some sort of AI thing hooked up with Subtext. But the coolest thing was this thing here with the players. So this has always been a part of Subtext, and I kind of downplayed it because I didn't want to go through the hassle of doing all the archetypes and all this stuff that's traditionally dramatic theory 101 when people get into it. Now that I have the AI stuff, I think it's really awesome. So for instance, like Ken here he's one of these main character antagonists, at least in this story. And you'll see the key motivation of every player is here up at the top. So this is where you would write everything, as long as it's in reference to the goal, right? So then in dramatic theory, all the objective story elements are in reference to the goal. So anytime you're going to write about this, and it's really cool because if you don't write it in reference to the goal, you're not going to get good answers back from the AI. So anytime you get garbage back from it, that's a really good sign that you're either not filling in the box correctly in terms of theory, or you need to push it further, or there's something that's not being explored quite right, which I think is a really cool thing. So obviously, like, so, and then here are the different elements that you can add to each player. And you can do it automatic, or I'm sorry, you can do it manually, where you can add all 64, the usual way. You can have it suggest based on what's already been chosen. So in other words, like, oh, I've got these 3 or 4 characters and I have 2 more characters. What elements are missing? That's what that does. And then the coolest thing is this thing. So the example here says Ken's inability to let Hannah go is the very thing that prevents him from moving on without her. Ken has control over the team of remaining survivors, and there's no way he's going to let that go. Ken's need for control and power and what stays in the way of him is what stays in the way of him finding peace. Oh, that's a spoiler. That's how it ends. So the idea is like, this is the motivation in regards to kind of like him getting control over his life again. So obviously control is already here. But if you just hit assign here, what that does, see how quick that is? It's crazy to me. It read this whole thing and said, these are the top 4 elements that are driving this motivation. So obviously clearly control, because it's in there like a bunch of times, but then also conscience, which you can kind of see that in there where he's, doing what's best because thinking of the future consequences. Hinder, because he's going to get in the way of everybody else in the story, and then perhaps like a more logical approach to things. And then you can just pick the ones. Green is the one that's most probable, because I do a whole probability thing on the different elements. And then the other ones are ones that should jog some kind of imagination or some kind of idea behind it. And then you can click those to add to them. And then once you have them all here, you can, so like for instance, if I added conscience, maybe I thought conscience was a good one. So conscience is here. I could either write how that appears or just have it generate some different ideas from making any rash decisions for fear of consequences. Words Hannah. And then if I want to summarize all these, so if I don't want to go through the trouble of writing this, I can just summarize this and it'll take these 3. Sometimes it just puts the sentences together. Other times it's clever about it. So this one, moving on without her. He has control over the team of remaining survivors and is afraid of making that could, well, that's a weird sentence, that could create consequences for Hannah. But you can see how it took these 3, summarize them into this, and then you could use that as the main motivation. And the whole point of this is once you have this here, then when you go into the different story beats and you choose like, oh, in this instance of learning, I want to see what Ken would do. And then when you generate the ideas for Ken in terms of learning here in the story, it's going to look back at that motivation. So then it's all tied to who he is as a player. So eventually you can just hit a button and then it'll just do it all for you. Right now it's a little manual, which I think is a good thing because then that helps people learn theory and then they can learn to write and actually like be a participant. One writer has asked if I could just put a button that will do everything, which I said, well, that'll probably cost like probably $50 if I added up all the different calls to make it work out. He's like, perfect. I thought that was like too much. I was like, that's too much. Don't you want to like figure it out on your own? And he's like, no, I just want all these ideas listed out and then I can build off of it. But I think the fact how quick that is crazy. So for this Hannah, so Hannah's the zombie girlfriend that he's attached to. So he's willing to do whatever it takes to help her loved ones find peace, even if it means putting herself in harm's way. She's level-headed and able to think clearly. So I'll just do that real quick. So help. She wants to help everybody. She's rational. She believes or she has faith in everybody. And then temptation could be a different thing.
Hey, Jim, this is Brendan.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you finally, too. I've been following you for years, so it's nice to talk to you.
Nice to meet you.
I just had a question. When you did that, where you got the 4 recommendations, is that hitting the assign button or the suggest button? And what is the difference between those two?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
it just garbled in the important part of your question. The assign is the AI, so that's why it has that AI thing here. The suggest is the one that looks at other players. So you'll see, what do I have? Avoid, control, conscience. I have conscience there twice, so I'll just get rid of this one here. Remove it. So avoid, pursuit, conscience, temptation, oppose. If I did another character, so let's say I wanted to create a new character, and then I said Brandon, and you can make Brandon male, female, or non-binary, which is super cool because it does it. It'll change the results of what you get out of there. So I'll say male. You notice there's no elements here because he's not a part of any through line yet. So it's only once you make that person a part of the objective story that then you get the motivations. And then if you have no idea what this person's all about, you can suggest, and then that goes through and looks to see what are the remaining, those 16 primary motivations that are kind of like Dramatica Theory 101, the ones that make all the archetypes, which I have found are the most practical use of it. I do have plans eventually to do the other 48.
Or you could, I suppose, if you have an idea of this character, you can write a little thing in there, and then you hit assign, and it'll read that and then suggest motivation or
Totally.
motivations for you, which is cool. So cool.
Something stuff, and then it's way too afraid to make decisions on his own. Would rather listen to what other people. You have to do enough. People say instead. I forget how much, but I think it's about 2 lines. It'll tell you if you don't have enough. There.
Cool.
So confidence, faith, the faith, believing in everybody else, giving control up to other people, maybe disbelieving in himself.
Real quick question. The suggest button, does that actually use tokens like the assign one does or no?
No. The assign, if you don't see the spinny Dramatica dice, the KTAD dice, then it doesn't. The only place where that isn't, yeah, this is just straight up programming. So
okay, that's what I thought. I didn't want to assume. I thought that. And anything with the DNA symbol is an AI driven thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to make it like really super clear. And by the way, anybody can interrupt me and ask any questions. Doesn't short questions, long questions. I'm totally open to it. But yeah, so anytime you have the AI stuff, it does, except for the premise builder. So if you go, I also cleaned this up too. So I made it nice. So it feels like there's a person here talking to you. The last 4 stories that you've built or are working on or made any kind of adjustment to, like a real app. And then it goes to the different sections. So for the premise builder, the ones in here, I wanted to make that so that you could just go crazy and not have to worry about it, regardless if you're the basic plan or the unlimited. So these don't count towards anything. This is the only place so you can go crazy making whatever you want.
They don't count towards like they don't cost tokens. Is that what you mean?
No.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, because I wanted to make it so you didn't feel, in an ideal world, everything would be unlimited, and that's why I changed it. I originally had like 400 or 500 in the middle. And then it just kind of bothered me that even the people that would make the commitment for the unlimited, which I think is a really good sign, still felt like, okay, I'm afraid to use this. And I don't want people to be afraid to use it. I want them to use it because then it just raises everything up. Otherwise, if you're always afraid, it's going to hold you back from creativity. So on this case, I can't do it everywhere. I don't have VC type abilities yet. But for the premise builder, I figured at least here you could have unlimited access to it, especially because you're trying to figure out what your story is all about. So it just made more sense here. The other ones you have more of a leeway. It's like, I have my story And all right, well, maybe I could try and do fate, interdiction, prediction, and destiny by myself. Whereas this is, right here in the very beginning, you should have unlimited.
That's great. Exactly for the reason you said, when you're starting out and to building your premise, it is helpful to have a little bit of input from something that knows much better or much more than you do.
Yeah, and I think because I've been with Dramatica since '96, so quite a while. I think this whole thing with the crucial elements, which I don't know if you noticed, I've renamed to pivotal elements, because I like the idea of it pivoting. It's the pivot point between character and plot. So that's what these are. Once you know and see like, oh, this is the argument of the story, and this is what my story is all about. And then you can make all the different connections of why you go through all this work to create this kind of structure. Then it just makes life so much easier. Where, like, for instance, let's make this Bill. This is Jim. And Bill is very emotional. So here. So what would feeling look like as an argument? Bill believes that people need to get an impression in order to be thought of as reliable. He thinks that if you want people to trust you, they need to have a good impression of you. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of an interesting argument. You want people to feel good about you, whereas Jim is completely rational. And Jim believes that people can use logic to figure out a problem in order to live happy. He believes that if people can identify a problem, they can find a way to solve it and live a happy life. There. So I'm going to be arguing all about logic and how if you can logically explain your premise, it'll feel good. And then Bill on the other side would be, well, no, you have to have a good impression. You have to feel it. You have to understand it, like the typical structure versus Panther argument, but more geared towards the emotionality of it and the rationality of it. And then you can always add on to it too. So if you want to try a different one, oh, that's fine. It's the same exact one. See if it does it again.
And you didn't really type anything in prior to hitting that, just the names.
Nope.
So it's completely random.
As someone who's been doing this for a very long time, I love this. I love just being able to hit a button and then there's like 5 or 6 ideas and I can just cherry pick the 2 or 3 that I like, change it around, and I move on to the next thing. I think it's amazing. Oops, I just hit it again, but that was probably a good one. Oh, okay. Bill believes that people need to feel bad. He believes that this is because if people feel bad about a group, they will be more likely to work together. Oh, that's interesting. So you can add that in there, right? And pick like the top 2 or 3 because they're all thematically tied together through feeling. So this works. Both ideas work together. And then when you want to generate their argument to see like, oh, I want to see if this is the kind of story I want to tell. Well, this one's not very good. You and I are very much alike. What do you mean? We both use different methods. I'm not sure how I see that's possible. You see, Bill, you use your emotions to figure out. I use logic. That's a really lame version of it. Let's see if there's a better. That was an easy one. It's like using Dramatica's Mad Libs. Let's see if this is better. No. That's just restating. So you can see why too I didn't want this to be token generated, because sometimes it gets frustrated at me and it just gives me the same things. All right, I'm looking for a way for people to get along. You're looking for a way for people to use their brain. That's actually pretty cool. I can actually see that as being somebody who could totally discount all of Subtext and Dramatica theory.
I mean, as simple as it seems, that actually, isn't, you can extrapolate from that anyway.
Yeah,
it was kind of surprising.
And then you can just save it, and then when you go to build the story, it gets saved in the actual story, so that you can refer back to it and then add on to it and change it the way you want, do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, sometimes it comes back, and I'm always learning new ways to get better results, but I feel like this is great if for no other reason than to understand the whole structure of a story form and how it works. So that's the newest thing. Does anybody have any other questions about? Feel free to ask. No? All right.
I
Yes.
had a question about the motivations panel again. If you could go back there, character motivations.
Go to this one. It has some stuff in it. Okay.
So when we're assigning them, when we're assigning motivations, do we need to be thinking like about the relationship of the different motivations to each other, like, you know, the diagonals or the horizontals or anything like that? Or is that a part of the AI, anything that it suggests to show where there's a conflict or where there's a kind of more of a partnership or anything like that?
That's a higher level thing, which I think is a great, you can definitely do that on top of it. I don't think of it in terms of that here because I'm trying to keep the amount of noise down at a reasonable level that's practical to be able to like, okay, now I can start working on it and then not have too much where it's like, okay, wait, is this person a dynamic pair? Are they a companion pair? Are they a dependent pair? You know, like the old Dramatica chessboard thing. This is kind of like in between it. I do have plans in the future when you go to do the story beats that it will specifically look for characters who would be, you know, against each other. So for instance, she's in this because of what the story form, she's all about pursuit and he's all about avoid. So they would naturally come into conflict. I think a lot of that happens naturally anyways. So if Dramatica theory is right, so if avoid and pursuit are dynamic pairs, then you don't necessarily have to make that connection yourself. If you make a character driven by avoid and then a character driven by pursuit, when you put them together in the story and you have, see what Ken does in terms of learning, well, he's going to be avoiding learning. What does Hannah do in terms of learning? She's going to be pursuing. They're naturally going to be against each other. So you don't even need to make that connection.
So Jim, this is, oh, excuse me. This is Brendan. I follow up with that too, because like I've noticed sometimes on these beats, you can pick, I think, is it the question mark or something where you can pick a character to be assigned to it, if it's in the overall story or something like that. I thought you could do that.
Yeah, right here you can pick the subject of the story.
Oh yeah, right there. Oh, so you pick there. Okay. Yeah, this is, and then you say with all those, you're just picking one character to illustrate that?
Mm-hmm.
Or can you, and somehow the language that you've from their character motivation is being referenced when it's processing this? Okay, but can you do that with other characters too? In the objective, so you just create another beat and select another character. Okay,
absolutely, yeah. So for instance, like learning, collapse all these. So let me close all these, and I'll just do the transits here. Okay. So we have doing, learning, obtaining. So in learning, this one's pretty much all about Hannah and a little bit about Ken. So if let's say I want to see what Ken is doing off on the side, you can just duplicate the story beat here. So then that adds another learning. And then you can come in here, change this to Ken.
Okay.
And let's see, he's spying on his neighbors. So let's see what is it, avoid and control, I think, right?
So it's going to refine the illustration based on their character motivation. Oh, that's really cool. Really cool.
So when he spies on his neighbors, he sees that they're all planning to leave the city and he doesn't want to be left behind. He tries to convince his friends to stay, but they are all set on leaving. Ken decides to go with him and starts to pack his things, but he is stopped by a group of zombies. So here specifically that he wants to do that. So let's say I just take this one and then I'll try a different one. Let's see, learns the truth. Okay, cool. So we do that. So this is the same learning, same thing with Ken, but now learning the truth. Let's see. Ken's fixed attitude leads him to miss out on potential romantic relationships. What it's also doing is it's referring to these
Oh, wow.
deeper aspects to work with learning as well. So that's why you're seeing this. It's not quite as natural as I'd probably like it to be. So let me see if, okay, so here's a good example. It says learns the truth about someone. So that's kind of generic. It is a general illustration. And so it's trying to find something interesting about him learning. Seems to be just, so let's say like this one, I've done it twice now. It's like repeated it. It's like, all right, let me see. So what if it's like learns the truth about scientists involved in the, let's see, learns about planning. All right, so now I've just made it, I've used my own imagination and I've changed the general illustration just a little bit to fit in. So now when you do it, it'll take this, mix it with everything and his motivations, and should be at least a little bit more interesting. Oh boy. Oh, that's funny. It's just referring to the old. Oh, that might actually be a bug because it keeps thinking I have spying on neighbors.
Well, I think, Jim,
This type of thing
I've
happened
done
to me
this.
as well. Just so you know.
I think you have to delete, I've played with this too. I think you have to delete what you wrote in that illustration thing. Not like keep, yeah. And
Yeah,
then
isn't it
it'll
looking-
refresh it. I'm wondering if it, like, doesn't it refer to what you've written there? I thought, because it builds on it sometimes, isn't it? Or no, that, I guess it's the continue.
It shouldn't. Let me see.
Okay, maybe I'm, oh.
A little bit better.
I guess not.
Let's see, let me go get some trouble with the law. This one's okay, but that's just kind of like repeating. Let's see if I can get something good here.
Then the continue is the interesting thing there, where it might build on it. I've played with that too.
Yeah, so
The
then
continue.
not giving up, but let's see, forms the rest of the group should work. So I took 2 from the other one and then this one. Yeah. No, but this looks like something's not working correctly. Let's add this. So the idea is that you would take, let's imagine this was actually working. You would take these 3, merge them together, which will put these 3 together into one idea.
Right.
All right, so it's like, as a result, Ken is in for a big surprise when he finally learns the truth and has to face the consequences. Okay, that's kind of cool. So I'll replace that. And then continue is like, just tells Subtext to keep telling this story, like this part here. So that is supposed to build off of that.
Just one thing quickly, Jim. Did you say that the AI does pick up on the fact that this one is like standpoint, potential, and growth? That's all factored in as well.
Yeah, this stuff here.
Oh,
I have
mentioned. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it takes this stuff. I have tried connecting different story beats together where, you know, like, all right, if the last story beat was about fate and this one's about prediction and the next one's about interdiction, what would go in here? The problem is it makes it a very narrow path. And I found way better results if I just completely ignore all that and then just do something completely brand new. It's not showing up here because obviously something has gotten a little tweaked in the mix. So I just have to make sure that gets fixed. But if you just allow this story form, so I'll just add this because I think that's pretty cool how that added that in there. If you just let the story form hold everything together, kind of like the earlier question about the different motivations, you can do any kind of storytelling. I could do any kind of version of avoid, any kind of version of pursuit. I could do anything about doing, anything about learning. And then the meaning is the order of it and the stuff, and when it happens when. And it will, to me, it seems to have a much broader expanse. It's much more open-ended for creativity than narrowing it. Because I could say, all right, this is understanding and it's supposed to be this, or it's going to be a success story. It's going to end in pursuit. And you'll get like 10 of the same exact things because it's going to take the highest probability of what would actually fit in there. And it just narrows the scope as opposed to giving you unlimited and just let the story form connect it all together.
So Jim, the other question I have in like in this screen here, there's also the AI button on the subtext portion of it.
Yes.
And can you just like what's, well, like right now it's not, I noticed like right now it's not showing. Sometimes it shows and sometimes it doesn't. That's one thing I don't understand. And also like, what's the difference between doing, again, like there. So doing it down with subtext versus doing it up with the illustration, you're getting, there's two different things going on. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for the most part, the separation right now is when you work on story points and you come in here, it's very much focused on the subtext and the meaning of it. It kind of blurs the line a little bit. You're like, sometimes this could work as storytelling, sometimes it could work as subtext. Definitely in the argument part of it, it's very much about, okay, why would avoiding responsibility, why would that be the position in an argument? What would that, how does that work? And then the storytelling would be your version of it in that story. So story points, the AI is very much geared right now towards the subtext of it, like the meaning of it. When it comes to the story beats, which are the other half, so this is all the story, as the story progresses, I've made it more about the storytelling, just from a practical experience, because I know that I personally don't spend a lot of time in here. I think it's cool, and I think sometimes it's really interesting, but if I just allow the AI to kind of glance at this and kind of put it in there, that's more than enough here. Because like doing, learning, obtaining, understanding, as far as like the plot, to me, because it's more temporal, I just want more storytelling, whereas something that's more of a story point, I want to know more what that actually means, and then I could put that in the storytelling. So this here will just read the subtext of this. So here, when I did it, you know, her journey is a metaphor for the process of accepting oneself after going through a major life change, which is something I didn't even think of. I was like, oh, it'd be cool if he's stuck with his girlfriend who's slowly turning into a zombie or is already there in an apocalypse. What's that going to be like? And so this is reading the subtext of what is written here to give you an idea of like, oh, the challenges she faces represent the internal struggles that come with accepting a new identity. Oh, that's really cool. I might actually use that later.
Yeah.
It's more subtext.
So there, the subtext, it's reading the, you know, the story form info, and it's reading your illustration and then putting it together into a subtextual kind of.
Yeah.
So cool.
Right? Super cool.
So cool. Oh man. Yeah.
So that's what's going on there. But just to finish up what I was trying to show, so we have the two different beats here, and that's one way you can do it. So then this one's all about Ken, this one's all about Hannah. But if you wanted to, what I usually do is I just stay in the same beat here, and I just change it like, okay, what's Tom gonna do? Especially when the transits, like, all right, learns you can't beat the system. So Tom's this like third guy who's kind of a pain. I think he's Hinder, but it should. Oh, okay, cool. see, this is much better. I'll have to see what's going on with the other ones. Tom's group of friends is trying to escape a zombie outbreak, but when they find a zombie, Tom is adamant that they kill it. So maybe he wants to kill Hannah. So, all right, I love that. Constantly trying to find a way to help her friends. Ken helps Hannah. Tom finally comes to terms with his own feelings for Hannah. It's very interesting. It's like taking all of these.
It's like creative brainstorming, but with the information, the thematic information already built in. It's so amazing. Yeah.
Right? Super cool. I mean, this should all be about Tom, so I have to figure out what is going on there. But you can do that. This is what I would do instead, especially at the transits. I would have 3 different lists. So there's just 3 characters in this. So this just gives me a nice broad idea of what happens between Hannah, Ken, and Tom. And then if I were to break that down into the different progressions, then you can see fact, security, threat, fantasy. All right. This one I put to Hannah. I think this one I put about Tom, and Ken and Tom have this argument over who's the boss because they're talking about security. I think threat. Oh, I didn't do that one yet. Fantasy, I haven't done that one yet. But then you would go through and build up those and then get your whole story there. But that to me is the best way, where you get a bunch of different ideas, merge them together, maybe do a little continue so you can see where that might take things, and then be done with it. And then move on to the next beat.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really, I have a blast doing it, just going through and just push button, push button, push button. Just go through. I know one person, the other reason I changed the unlimited is one person blew through everything in one day and did his whole story. And got the whole thing done, all 4 through lines and every single progression done, and then that was it. And I was like, okay. So I want to make sure that didn't stop anybody from doing anything. I really like the influence character, the way that that's turned out, where, like, let's see, Hannah's the influence character here, right? So let's say she's not thinking of her relationship with others. Let's just say that's her impact on Ken. Hopefully I have this worked out. Let's see. Oh, Hannah is talking to her best friend about how she's conflicted between her feelings for her country and her boyfriend. So Ken is her boyfriend, and the country, like, okay, this could be the world because it's fallen into an apocalypse. Or Ken is talking to her friends about how she doesn't understand why people are so against nationalism. All of a sudden now it's like, oh, it's like Hannah is a mega zombie or something. Something to that effect. And I think if I have, oh, I don't have anything. So, all right. So this is a really good example where, because I didn't have anything in the synopsis, it went through and took what it's read a lot about recently or whenever it's done it, and found ideas of what, not thinking of relationships with others, how that could create problems. So nationalism came up. What you want to do for these story beats is you want to make sure that you've illustrated. I haven't even illustrated her fixed attitude or her basic drives and desires. Because what you do is you illustrate this, and you can see it here for Ken. He's partnered with a live zombie. And then the future, he's like really focused on the future and that stuff. And then when you go to the synopsis, it'll pull in all that stuff and make like a nice 3 to 4 sentence paragraph that it then uses when it goes to do this stuff. So if you don't have that, like I just did, it's like not doing your homework before. You're just, but you can, oh, nationalism. Okay, well, now I'm going to go back into here. And when it comes to her fixed attitude, being afraid of people from other countries. Now I just have an idea of who Hannah is. And maybe because that's where the apocalypse came from or something, or the zombie thing. So then when you click the AI now, it'll say being afraid of people from other countries. And this one specifically is seeing her impact on the main character. So if Hannah is afraid of people from other countries, she may not be able to travel with Ken to visit his family. Well, I don't know if that's going to be a problem in a zombie apocalypse, but you can see how you can kind of tweak that a little bit. Like she's afraid to travel anywhere because she's afraid of other people who don't look like her or speak the same language, which makes social situations awkward. That could limit the places they go together. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, this is going to be even harder because maybe there's a cure somewhere, but he can't take her. You see how that's like generating all kinds of.
Hannah seems to be a very high functioning zombie.
That was what I was imagining, that she's on the verge of it. It's like kind of.
It's interesting. Yeah. Oh, she hasn't fully transformed yet. Okay.
Yeah. Well, because it's, what is it? I think the consequence is turning into something.
Turning into a monster. All right. Wow.
But because he's the antagonist, he's actually making it worse. So it's a really cool story. So he wants to keep her, but by keeping her, he's making her turn more and more into a zombie. There's a whole metaphor going on there, obviously, that I'm sure that would read in the subtext of it. But once you get the different story points here for like the different influence character, it disappeared. But yeah, when you save that here, save, specifically what are her drives, hating. Well, now she was going to be really ultra nationalist, right? Then when you go to do the arc, all right, so she's completely driven by her feelings, whatever she's most passionate about. That'll pull that into the synopsis that will then do this. And the nice thing here is then, so if you merge these together, which I'm sure we'll just put the two sentences together. She loves her country, but she can't help but feel drawn to her boyfriend. All right. Then if you do continue, it's going to show how this attitude has an effect on Ken. Ken is challenged to grow by this conversation because he has to learn to see both sides. He has to learn why people might be against nationalism and also learn to understand why people might be drawn to it. So now you're seeing how the influence character is not her own character. She's a perspective that challenges the main character to rethink their own justifications. And I would just do this, and then I would move on to the next one. And I always like to summarize this here too, because then it's just easier to read.
Yeah, the summaries are very cool sometimes, but how they economize it all into one statement.
And then it's just easier to read than preconscious memory, subconscious. And then the relationship. What's that?
So I should have that little, I was just looking on my IC. Yeah. I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. It's in the relationship story.
Yeah.
So if their relationship is, love, I would say, romantic. So then here, conceiving of a different way to do things. Again, I haven't done the synopsis, so it's going to be very generic. But it should talk about a relationship, a romantic relationship, and what it means to start conceiving of a different way to do things. Unless, yeah. Wow. When the fixed attitude breaks, a love story about two people who are so set in their ways that they never truly let each other in. But when their relationship is put to the test, they must learn to let go of their fixed attitudes and let love in. Wow. Okay, so conceiving of a different way to do things. A love story about two people who are stuck in a rut. But do you see how it turns like a zombie apocalypse movie into something really like emotional and different? And that continue button in the IC is great. Should be labeled in a way that lets the user know it will show how yes. John's asking if the because the behavior on the icy continue is different. Yes, that should be different. I
Yeah.
agree.
Thanks, Jim. I've got to get ready for work. Thanks all.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. I didn't realize that's what it was going to be. It was just like a demo thing.
That's great.
But,
this is excellent. Thank you.
yeah. Hopefully it gives you ideas of how that all fits together and just like all the new stuff. So clearly, like, this is it. I'm not going to add anything new. I'll make it so it works and different characters work. But I love this stuff because it's, oh no, I don't want that one. I want the rut one. I like this one and I like the rut. Oh, did it go away? Oh, there it is. Okay. Breaking free. That makes way more sense anyways. They decide to take a chance on 11 break free from their pass. Just replace that. Oop. Let love in. And then you go to planning to take care of everything. All right, let's see where that develops. But again, I don't have, it's very generic. They be consumed by their need for each other, their relation and intensity leads to violence. All right, that actually is pretty cool. So it's very generic because I don't have anything illustrated as far as, oh, wait, do I? Oh, I do. I have the domain here. They're delusional. Oh, changing into something terrifying, but I don't think. Oh, I don't. Okay, so do you see how generic this is, right? The couple's love turns into a dangerous obsession and they become consumed by their needs. So then if I summarize this. So it starts out sweet and innocent, but quickly moves into something dark and twisted. They become so obsessed. Their love turns into a dangerous obsession. They become consumed by their need for each other. And their love turns into a terrifying force that threatens to destroy them both. It's interesting. And this should be a little different. Losing touch with reality. It's actually kind of cool. This one's almost already taken care of. But that's the general approach towards it. Towards working on. But that's pretty much it. The only other big thing I did, which was a suggestion from Sebastian, which I thought was brilliant, is just change the names of these tabs here to be like verbs, actions. So the first section is conceptualizing, which is story forming, illustrating, which is story encoding, plotting, which is story weaving, and then story reception, which is the writing part of it. Just to be very clear. And then just to make these acts kind of differentiate between the transits. Other than that, that's pretty much the state of the union for the last 3 or 4 months. Does anybody have any questions about anything in particular?
I have another question.
Sure, go for it. Because that's pretty much like
one thing I noticed.
Oh, go ahead.
What's that?
Oh, I just said that's pretty much all I had to show. I just wanted to get everybody together, see people's faces. I haven't seen Revaxis in like 4 months, so it's nice to see.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yes, and Revaxis has a whole thing that he did way back in January, which is some really cool stuff that I've put on the side, but hopefully will start to come out here in the next couple months, which is really, really cool. Like new
That
stuff.
would be great.
Very, very future thinking. Yes. So yeah,
so
go ahead.
Brendan, the question I had, but I've been kind of learning this over the last few weeks. When it got to putting the treatment together, learning how to take the story beats and bring them up into the top and weave them together. I was frustrated because the story drivers were not showing up there, but is the concept that if there's an event in the story driver that you want to be in the story woven part, you need to either put it at the beginning of or the end of an act, basically, or I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong with that, or because they physically do not show up in the treatment.
Yes, you're totally 100% correct.
Okay.
Brendan, right? Isn't that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Brendan is saying so you have the story drivers here, which are part of the story form. So action. So then the objective story, which is where you see them play out, you have these story drivers that are in between the different acts. So they connect. And anything that's up here at the top, these are dynamics. So these have an effect on the model. So they're not actually things in the model. They're what happens to the model. So all this stuff is what twists everything up and moves stuff around. This is the actual model and what you would actually see in a story.
Okay.
So when it comes to the story drivers, they absolutely do not exist on their own in a place that's not part of one of the story beats. So they should either be the end of this one prior, which would be, so for instance, this is an action to keep Hannah from losing her mind completely and running off on her own. Ken sets it up so he can feed off. Oh, that's right. I forgot I did this. He gives her somebody to eat. The remaining survivors find out and turn on both of them, and then they're on the run. So I think that came to me. Oh, I can put that down. Oh, hold on. So then now if I turn the progressions on, you'll see the last one here is destiny. So I can either make this part of destiny, that this is just the way that things are going to be. And so he's like, all right, I'm destined to be with her, so I'm going to give her somebody to eat. Like, that's a little bit problematic way of using destiny to solve a problem. And you can see how that fits. Or you can use the fact one, which could be with the other group learning the facts of what he did. You can have both if you want to, but it's absolutely not supposed to be a part of it. Now, I could be a lot more clever about taking what's written here and automatically putting it in here for you, right? Or suggesting how that comes into play when you get into here so that you don't lose it necessarily.
But just go ahead.
Yeah, so that's more of a technical thing. I'm also trying to force people into learning that it's not a part of the actual story. It's just telling the relationship between things.
But yeah, just that remembering to fold it in one place or another if you want. So I guess it could, I mean, I don't know if those drivers could happen off screen or out of the story. I suppose they could, or I don't be referred to.
You'd want to still make it part of the story form, otherwise it's not part of the story. So even if this action happens off screen, I would still want it to be either a part of destiny or a part of fact.
Got it.
Otherwise, anything that happens that's not a part of the story is not a part of the story, and you cut it out and it won't have any kind of difference. This is a huge thing because he's trying to keep her, so he like feeds her somebody else. That creates a huge problem, makes things a lot worse, and then puts them on the run.
This one seems like an easy one to split, that driver. With the first half going to the last progression and then learning with fact. They find out.
Like, yeah, and like what John's saying, like it could either be just all in destiny, it could be all in fact, or it could be in both. So
Destiny one could be cool. If there's like someone who's injured, he's like, oh, you're halfway there already. I'm gonna feed you to my girlfriend.
Like, oh, like you're not gonna make, like that's the fact part.
Like,
no,
for the destiny part. Like this is just where you end up.
Oh, shoot.
It's no coincidence that you're here and I need to feed my girlfriend.
But you see, then that makes it just elevates it, because if you're just looking at action, it's like, oh, this happens. But now when you're like what John was just saying about tying it to destiny, now it's both hilarious and horrifying all at the same time, you know? It's kind of like if you've watched any of Barry this season, everything is story form, everything's both hilarious and horrifying, and there's not like one missed opportunity to tie everything in. It's just like there's no wasted space on anything. So that's what I'm hoping this will help people get an idea of what to do. Okay.
So I know one of the parts or purposes of this mixer was because you have the second act solution, which I haven't signed up for, and I'm not sure if, you know, it might be good to do sometime. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, but I have a friend who might be interested in it. I don't know if I invited her to this. I'm not sure if she joined us, but she when does it start? It starts in a few weeks here, is it?
Oh, it's next Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
And it goes for 6 weeks. So it's like Tuesday, Thursday, 11 to 1, supposedly. I always go over. And then everything gets recorded and then you have access to it. And I had 22 people show up or sign up, which is great. So far, I think 12 have confirmed. So it's a really good group. I found the first time I did it, there was like 10 or 12. Second time was about the same. The third one, there was only 3 people, which was really interesting because then everybody got like one-on-one attention. But I feel like the higher group is great because then people break off into little breakout rooms, and then conceivably, I know of access that people in that group have made. I think they have secret conversations on the Discord. I don't know because I don't.
We have tried. We have
I don't
tried.
have access to
So
that.
far we have not been, at least from my side, and when I tried, we have been really successful in making a consistent group that does things, but attempts are there. I
know in the
wish it
beginning,
was more successful though.
Yeah, like after the first
I
month,
wish there was more connection, but we were not lucky.
yeah, everybody has different. That was like when I taught at CalArts, there were some classes that were really great some years, and then other years were not so good. But yeah.
And when is the next one? If I don't make this one, when or how often do you do?
I think mid-September. I think sometime when the school year starts. Just depends.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't think anybody would show up for the summer one, but it's actually the most popular. What is that?
It was I live in a condo and they were doing their air, what do you call it? Blowing, the blowing of all the dust and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it sounded like
Sorry.
motorcycle. I thought people were taking. It was like the sign, everybody's jumping on their motorcycle to go. But yeah, I hope to do this more often, just to get together with no sort of expectations, and then if anybody has any questions. All the AI stuff is just super exciting to me because it was relatively simple. There's still a lot more I could do to make it even better, but I love just what it's able to do right now. Yeah, does anybody have any other questions about the class or about Dramatica in general? No? Okay. So what I'll do is as soon as this recording's available, I'll put it up. And so if you know somebody who wanted to come but didn't see it in time or wasn't able to come to it, we can go ahead and put that up. And then, yeah, for those of you who are coming next week, I will see you next week. And should be a fun session. And then, as always, if you have any questions about anything theory related or suggestions for this, I'm in the Discord pretty much 24 hours a day, so you can always leave comments there. And then it was really great. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for having it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.